Welcome to Pulse America News. I am Kundi, and today I am bringing you a story that will completely change the way you think about modern warfare and military power. Stay with me till the end, because what happened in the last few hours is something that military experts around the world are calling one of the most significant strategic developments in recent memory. The question everyone is asking right now is simple. How did a missile defense system worth nearly $1 billion get taken out? And what does this mean for the future of the entire Middle East region? Let us start from the very beginning so that everything is crystal clear for you. There is a missile defense system called THAAD, which stands for Terminal High Altitude Area Defense. This system is considered one of the most advanced and expensive military technologies that exists on the planet today. It was positioned in Jordan as part of a broader regional defense strategy. Now here is what you need to understand about how this system actually works, because this is the key to understanding everything that happened next. The THAAD system has two main components that work together. The first component is the radar system. Think of the radar as the eyes of the entire operation. Without working eyes, you simply cannot see anything coming toward you. The radar scans the sky constantly, detects any incoming missiles or threats from a great distance, calculates their flight path, their speed, and their trajectory, and then sends all of that information to the second component. The second component is the interceptor missiles. These are the fists of the system. Once the radar spots a threat and calculates exactly where it is going, it sends a signal to the interceptor missiles telling them exactly where to go and what to hit. The interceptor then launches and destroys the incoming threat before it can reach its target. Now here is where the story becomes extremely important. Reports and satellite imagery that have now been made public show a before and after picture of this THAAD installation. In the before image, you can clearly see the full system in place, everything operational, the radar unit standing tall, the entire installation looking exactly as it should. Then you look at the after image, and the situation is completely different. The radar component of the system has been destroyed, and I want you to understand what this actually means in practical terms. When the radar is gone, the entire system becomes completely blind. Completely blind. It does not matter how many interceptor missiles you still have sitting there ready to launch. If your radar is destroyed, those interceptors have absolutely no idea where to go. They cannot detect anything. They cannot calculate any flight path. They cannot intercept anything at all. It is exactly like a person who loses their eyesight. That person may still have arms and legs and be physically strong, but if they cannot see where they are going, they cannot move effectively. They cannot fight. They cannot defend themselves. That is precisely the situation that has now been created. The estimated cost of just the radar component that was destroyed is close to $1 billion. $1 billion. And this is not just about money, which is already an enormous amount. The real problem is time. Building and deploying a system like this from scratch takes years. We are talking about 5 to 6 years minimum. It also requires more than 100 specialized troops and technical personnel just to operate it. These are not people you can simply replace overnight. These are highly trained specialists with years of experience working specifically with this technology. American experts who have now spoken on the record are saying something that is quite stunning. They're saying that this radar system cannot be replaced quickly and cannot be repaired given the current condition it is in. The damage is too extensive. And this brings us to the wider picture of what is actually happening right now across the region. Here is the strategic reality that military analysts are now discussing openly. The approach being used involves sending smaller, lower-cost drones and missiles in large numbers. These are not the most advanced weapons available. They're deliberately lower grade. But here is the genius of this approach. Every time one of these cheaper drones or missiles is sent, the defense systems on the other side have to respond by using their own interceptor missiles, which cost millions and millions of dollars each. Former U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken himself made a public statement that I want you to pay attention to very carefully. He said that interceptors are being used up at a very concerning rate. He pointed out that using a missile worth millions of dollars to shoot down a drone that costs only a few $100s is simply not sustainable. He said that the supply of interceptors is very limited and that production takes years to scale up. Think about what that means. You are spending millions to destroy something that costs almost nothing. Over time, your expensive interceptor stockpile runs out, and your opponent keeps sending wave after wave of cheap drones. This is a strategic approach that has been used throughout history in different forms, and it is proving extremely effective right now. The side with the expensive technology is being drained, while the side using simpler and cheaper methods keeps the pressure going without emptying its own resources nearly as fast. Now add to this the fact that the radar system has been destroyed. Before this happened, if an incoming missile was detected, defense forces would have somewhere between 15 and 20 minutes of warning time. That is enough time to properly calculate the threat and mount a coordinated response. But now, with the radar gone, that warning window has collapsed down to perhaps 1 or 2 minutes maximum, and in some cases, there may be no warning at all. Cluster munitions, for example, are a single missile that releases hundreds of smaller projectiles once it gets close to its target. If you only have 1 or 2 minutes of warning, your radar cannot even properly track and respond to something like that in time. On top of all of this, reports indicate that around 25% of early warning systems in the region have now been significantly degraded. This is not a small number. This represents a massive reduction in situational awareness. When your early warning systems are down, you're essentially operating blind in a very dangerous neighborhood, and that is an extremely difficult position to be in from a military and strategic standpoint. The economic and financial ripple effects of this conflict are now being felt far beyond the battlefield itself. Consider aviation alone. Around 11,000 flights have been canceled so far as a direct result of the instability in the region. Dubai International Airport, which is one of the busiest and most important aviation hubs in the entire world, has seen approximately 87% of its flights suspended or canceled. That is an almost complete shutdown of one of the world's most critical air travel hubs. The economic damage from that alone runs into enormous figures, and it affects people, businesses, trade, and supply chains all around the globe. But here is perhaps the most consequential financial development that is now emerging. The Financial Times, which is one of the most respected and credible financial publications in the world, has reported that Gulf countries are now actively reviewing their overseas investments and financial positions. These are countries that have placed enormous amounts of money into foreign markets, including American financial markets. And the report suggests that this review is not just theoretical. There are indications that significant capital withdrawal is being considered and possibly already beginning. I am Kundi from Pulse America News, and I want to make sure you understand why this matters so much. If Gulf nations begin pulling their investments out of American financial markets on a large scale, that has consequences that go far beyond military strategy. It affects the dollar, it affects interest rates, it affects the American economy at a fundamental level. The financial dimension of this conflict is something that most mainstream coverage is simply not talking about, but it could turn out to be just as significant as anything happening on the battlefield itself. Now let us talk about the timeline of events and how expectations have shifted dramatically. Initially, public statements suggested that this conflict could be resolved very quickly. Early timelines talked about a matter of days, perhaps a week or so. Then that estimate grew to 4 weeks. Now, credible sources and leaks coming out of senior defense circles are suggesting a timeline of up to 7 months. 7 months! That is a completely different kind of conflict than what was originally described to the public. It more closely resembles the kind of prolonged, grinding, resource-draining conflict that we saw unfold in Ukraine, where both sides found themselves locked in a situation that proved far more difficult to resolve than anyone initially predicted. There are also reports that the supply of interceptor missiles to Gulf countries has been paused or significantly reduced. And I say this while acknowledging that the information environment right now is very complex and constantly shifting. But the pattern that emerges from multiple credible sources is consistent. Resources are being depleted faster than they can be replaced or replenished. Production timelines for these advanced systems are measured in years, not months, and the strategic pressure is not letting up. Let me also explain another tactical element that has been widely discussed by defense analysts. Decoy techniques are being used very effectively to drain expensive interceptor missiles. Here's how it works. Satellite imagery shows what appears to be a military asset, a ship, a vehicle, or an installation. Defense systems respond by launching interceptors to neutralize the threat. But when the interceptors arrive, they discover that the target was not real. It was a decoy, a dummy, a fake structure designed to look real from above. The interceptors are gone, used up, and nothing of value was destroyed on the other side. This cycle, if repeated enough times, is absolutely devastating to any defense system that relies on a finite supply of expensive interceptor missiles. The deception does not stop there either. Data from surveillance and tracking systems is reportedly being fed back to inform targeting decisions. This means that every time a surveillance asset reveals information, there is a risk that this information is being used to prepare the next move. The intelligence game happening underneath the visible military conflict is just as important as the missiles and drones that everyone can see.
So where does all of this lead? What is the realistic endgame here? Most serious analysts who are looking at this situation objectively are pointing toward the same conclusion. The only realistic path to ending this conflict is a negotiated agreement. There is simply no military solution that anyone can point to that brings this to a clean conclusion in the near term. The resources needed to sustain an extended military campaign are being consumed at rates that are not sustainable. The radar and early warning systems that have been degraded cannot be quickly replaced. The economic pressures from canceled flights, disrupted trade, and potential investment withdrawals are growing every single day. The shape of any potential agreement would likely involve several key elements. Regional security guarantees that address the legitimate concerns of all parties involved. Changes to the foreign military presence in the region, which has been a major point of tension for a very long time. A framework for economic cooperation that gives the Gulf countries stability and security going forward. And critically, the involvement of major powers like China and Russia, who are both positioning themselves to play a constructive role in any peace process that emerges. China, in particular, has been steadily building its influence and credibility in the Middle East through economic investment, diplomatic engagement, and a consistent message of non-interference in internal affairs. Russia has deep historical ties in the region and has been looking for opportunities to reassert its global diplomatic relevance after the challenges it has faced elsewhere. Both of these countries have strong incentives to help broker a resolution, and both have the relationships needed to be taken seriously as mediators. The human cost of all of this must not be forgotten either. Civilian populations are the ones bearing the heaviest burden. Hospitals, residential areas, and civilian infrastructure are suffering in ways that are absolutely heartbreaking. No geopolitical analysis, no matter how accurate or insightful, should ever lose sight of the real human beings who are living through this every single day. Families displaced, lives shattered, a region that was not very long ago characterized by economic growth and relative stability, now facing profound uncertainty. The Gulf countries themselves are deeply frustrated. These nations had built prosperous, forward-looking economies. They had positioned themselves as global hubs for finance, aviation, tourism, and trade. Their citizens are not accustomed to this level of instability and disruption. They did not choose this conflict. They did not provoke it, and yet they are now living with its consequences every single day. The anger in these countries is real, and it is growing. The sense that decisions made far away without their meaningful input or consent have dragged the entire region into a crisis that serves nobody's long-term interests is a feeling that is becoming impossible to ignore. Ultimately, the lesson that this situation is teaching us in real time is that modern military power is far more complex and far more fragile than most people assume. A billion-dollar defense system can be neutralized. Warning times can be compressed from 20 minutes to 2 minutes. Expensive interceptors can be drained by cheap drones. And financial markets can amplify the effects of military conflict in ways that no missile can address. This is Kundi from Pulse America News. The situation is developing rapidly, and I will continue to bring you the most accurate and thorough analysis available. Please share this video with everyone you know, because this is a story that affects every single one of us, no matter where in the world we are watching from. Subscribe to Pulse America News and leave your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think the outcome of this situation will be? What do you think the right path forward looks like? Your perspective matters, and I genuinely want to hear it.